A common misconception out there is that everybody is a little bit ADHD. And although hearing this as an ADHDer can feel very triggering, there are reasons why this statement is commonly used. Everyone struggles with organization once in a while. Forgetfulness plagues all of us at times, and we all struggle to maintain attention now and then. The difference for ADHDers, however, is that we are chronically disorganized, forgetful, and we are constantly struggling with our attention span, especially if the things we need to pay attention to aren't interesting to us because we have interest-based nervous systems. In today's video, I'm going to explain what ADHD is, so make sure you save this video and send it to your loved one so that they can learn more about what ADHD is and how it's affecting your life. It's important to note that ADHD is not a mental illness. ADHD is not a learning disability and has absolutely nothing to do with one's IQ. ADHD, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, is a neurological disorder that affects the brain's self-managing system. ADHDers have a 30 to 40% delay in our executive functions, which are located in the front part of our brain called our prefrontal cortex. I want you to think of your executive functions like the office manager of your brain. I want to talk more about executive functions because it's imperative to understand the effects ADHD can have on you so that you can not only pass this video on to others, but to also give you a better understanding of how your brain works as an ADHDer. And this is a work I'm passionate about and love doing because I have ADHD too, and I know firsthand how hard it is to live with this condition, but with the right support in place, you can thrive with ADHD. And if you are a woman late diagnosed with ADHD and you'd like to see how I can support you, there is a link to book a call with me in the description of this video. I'd love to hop on a call to see how I can help. Your executive functions are responsible for self-awareness, self-restraint, both nonverbal and verbal working memory, emotions, self-motivation, and planning and problem solving. So since your executive functions are responsible for so much, and as ADHDers, we have a 30 to 40% delay in this part of our brain, you can see how the office manager of our brain is not very reliable, is she? So let's dig into these points just a little bit further. Self-awareness is the ability to command self-directed attention, for example, reading the room as to how others perceive us. This is where we might hear that we're too much, but lack the self-awareness to know how to act in certain situations that would be considered more acceptable. It's important to remember that ADHD has nothing to do with intelligence. So when our lack of self-awareness is negatively judged, it really does hurt our feelings and can impact our self-esteem negatively. In fact, the average child by age 10 will hear 20,000 pieces more of negative feedback than a non-ADHD or a neurotypical child. I, for example, was raised in the 80s by a very authoritarian stepmom who was always judging me, and authoritarian parenting does not work for any children, but especially does not work for ADHD children. This form of parenting has led to many of us late diagnosed with ADHD with a ton of childhood trauma. We also struggle with self-restraint, or more commonly known as the ADHD symptom, impulsivity. This doesn't mean that as ADHDers we can't work on better self-restraint, but it is part of that office manager's job, the 30 to 40% delay in our executive functioning skills, which may lead to that office manager taking more coffee breaks than in a non-ADHD brain. Nonverbal working memory is the ability to hold things in our mind to guide behavior. For example, remembering where we put our keys when we walked into a room. Now, do non-ADHD people struggle with memory issues from time to time? Absolutely. But those of us with ADHD struggle with this all the time, and it can feel really frustrating, make us feel stupid, and send us into a shame spiral when we realize that we forgot something important like paying a bill on time. Verbal working memory is connected to speech, remembering a series of steps or a phone number that was told to us is because of our working memory. This can be hard for ADHDers at work, for example, when your supervisor gives you verbal instruction but then doesn't follow up with an email with those instructions. Again, this makes us feel bad about ourselves and can really exacerbate things like imposter syndrome in the workplace as well as perfectionism. Having ADHD is not a moral failing, but it can feel like one at times. Your ADHDer may also struggle with their emotions. This is known as emotional dysregulation. We may struggle to maintain our cool in stressful situations or even during transitions. It's common for ADHDers to get really upset if they or their thought process is interrupted, and this is because we struggle with transitions. If an ADHDer is working on something and gets interrupted, it's really hard for us to know exactly where we left off, making it so that we need to start from the beginning, and this can be really, really frustrating for us. We are more sensitive to rejection than the average person, and we might catastrophize a situation that didn't go right for us because we also struggle with self-awareness as well as restraint previously mentioned. The most important thing for you to understand about your ADHD is that when they do become upset, their ADHD symptoms instantly become worse. In other words, we have even less access to our executive functions when we are unable to control our emotions. Now, that's a tough feedback loop for an ADHDer to be in. Self-motivation is also where our office manager or executive functions is sleeping on the job. Dr. Russell Barkley says that ADHD is not a knowing problem, it's a doing problem. This in and of itself exacerbates the anxiety and depression many ADHDers feel because we know we need to do the thing. But if the thing isn't interesting, it's really hard to find the motivation to do it. The icing on the cake for motivation is that we also struggle to produce dopamine, which is the motivation neurotransmitter. I saw a short ADHD video a while back that explains our struggles with self-motivation beautifully. You have the physical ability to touch a hot stove, right? You have the motor skills to turn the stove on and to place your hand on the hot burner. But just because you have the motor skills to do this, something internal is stopping you from being able to touch that hot stove. And this is the knowing doing problem that Dr. Russell Barkley is referring to. Though instead of a hot stove, it might be paying our bills on time or keeping our home tidy. And this is where ADHD coaching can really help. Now, if the task is something that you're interested in doing, then we can hyper focus on it, and it can lead to a whole other gamut of issues like ignoring our other responsibilities, time blindness, even forgetting to eat, drink enough water, or to use the bathroom. The last area of our executive functions that we struggle with is planning and problem solving. We can struggle to know where to start on the tasks we need to do. And because we don't know where to start, we either go into task paralysis because we're too overwhelmed, or we become emotionally dysregulated. And remember what I said about our ADHD symptoms being negatively impacted when we are upset. It can feel impossible to plan and problem solve when any type of emotional dysregulation or upset is at play. There are, of course, more aspects of ADHD that I have not touched on, but I hope that this video has shed some light for fellow ADHDers as well as the neurotypicals who love them. And if you're female and late diagnosed with ADHD, I'd love to chat with you to see how I can support you. Again, the link to book a call with me is in the description of this video. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you learned something today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who you want to understand your ADHD brain a little bit better. I'll see you next week in the next video.